Hey, it's Nick Kemp here, and before we dive into this episode, I'd like to tell you about the Ikigai retreat I'm hosting this year in May. Discover and experience Ikigai in Japan, away from all the tourist hotspots in some of Japan's best kept secret places. This is a study trip for both personal and professional development, and activities will include cultural workshops, zazen meditation, washi paper making, forest bathing, cooking classes, pottery making, tea ceremony, along with meaningful discussions, amazing food, and heartfelt hospitality. If you'd like to learn more, please go to ikigaitribe.com. Now let's get started.
The transformation economy works toward economic benefit, but it's rooted in values and purpose and connection and goals and aspirations. So the transformation economy represents just this wonderful shift, not just in travel and tourism, but globally, to really reframe how we go about our lives, how we travel, the purchases we make, the agency that we have, so it can all be more aligned with who we are and who we're trying to become.
My guest today on the Ikigai podcast is Jake Haupert, founder of the Transformational Travel Council. Jake has built a reputation as a next-generation experienced strategist, designer, and sustainable tourism expert. And he's also a leading voice in regenerative consulting and facilitation. At the heart of Jake's work is a deep belief: experiences are sacred. They awaken us, shake us, and stir us into a greater awareness of who we are and how we're connected to one another, to nature, and to ourselves. His approach to transformational travel invites us to live and travel differently, more consciously, more lovingly, and more fully aligned with our true selves. Welcome to the podcast, Jake.
Hey, thank you, Nick. True honor to be here. That was a mouthful, huh?
Yeah, we finally got here. But actually, one of your clients and a subscriber of mine, Louise, suggested that I reach out to you because she saw a connection between the work that we do, and I'm glad she did.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, we did have a chat last year, and you mentioned you went to Japan. So how was your trip to Japan last year?
Yeah, it was last September. It was magical. Yeah, I was scouting out a trip for the Transformational Travel Council, or a pilgrimage on the Kimono Koto, and was there with a couple great friends of mine. It was special. It was sacred. It was also disorienting. It was my second trip to Japan, the first one to Tokyo, and that was one thing. It's its own thing. It is something else. But to get into this region and deep into nature and on this path was special, but also disorienting in some ways. It is a very beautiful and complex culture from my experience, my perspective anyway.
Certainly is. The learning never ends in Japan, and there's so much to explore. I guess that's the beauty of the country, the people, and the culture. So when people who don't know you ask what you do, you seem to have many roles, many hats that you wear. What do you generally tell people?
I'm a big proponent of meeting people where they're at. And so I do adapt that, but for the purpose of our conversation today, it's about experience strategy and really amplifying the benefits of experiences. So I specifically work with travel companies and hotels and destinations around the planet on how they can really design for more purpose, more connection, more meaning, and help people really become better versions of themselves through experiences, through their travels.
Love it. Yeah, meaningful travel. So when did your love for travel begin?
Yeah, good question. Well, I'm a very curious soul, and it was in my youth that my grandparents were dropping the dog off at our house and heading off on these journeys around the world. We're talking about early '80s, and my grandparents were intrepid travelers, especially my grandma, and they'd be gone for months at a time. And they'd come back and tell stories and bring souvenirs. And I think that was the first glimpse into travel, was through her eyes and through the lens of great storytelling. So that definitely set me on a path, and she was able to nurture some opportunities for me to go and travel. She chaperoned a trip early on. I didn't do a lot of traveling growing up in my youth. So the few times that I did, they really stand out. And they were certainly influential in terms of what I decided to study in school. And once I was able to get out and be free, I went for it. And I guess I haven't slowed down since.
And you still got the travel. I think you've got more than the travel bug. It's your life and business.
Well, there's just so much power in it, right? Get us out of our comfort zones, away from our homes. It's provides a lot of opportunity for us to really go back to who we are and why we're here and who we want to become.
Well, I think you're touching on what transformational travel means. Having hosted a few retreats myself, this idea of transformational travel really inspires me. So, how do you define a transformational travel?
The definition that we have out there that seems to be recognized as the definition. I'm not a big fan of things being certified or concrete. I think things like this are, they iterate and evolve. And as we continue to go deeper into the art and science of transformational travel, it continues to shift. But the one now is intentionally traveling to stretch, learn, and grow into new ways of being and engaging the world.
Love it. Yeah, it's exciting prospect to, instead of just going on a holiday of luxury and visiting crowded tourist spots, to go and grow and challenge yourself and connect with locals in a meaningful way. It sounds like that's where we're going, or that's where you're wanting to take people.
Yeah. I mean, I think travel and tourism today is becoming exceedingly more superficial and artificial and lacking in those experiences and connections that we crave when we travel. But we are seeing a shift now, I think, and especially in the last year and a half. I don't know if it's just given sort of different dynamics of what's happening in the world and politics or the chaos and the digital lives that we live, but people seem to be seeking out travel for an opportunity to reconnect with who they are, contemplate questions that they have in life, help them achieve goals or aspirations, whatever that may be. But people are definitely looking at travel as a tool or as a practice, right? As opposed to just a product or something that they want to be entertained by.
Yeah, you've actually referenced the hero's journey as a metaphor and structural guide for transformational experiences. So, how do you incorporate it, stages of departure, initiation, return into the programs if you do that?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we've gone pretty deep into mythology and Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. We've gone into other modalities. We've explored travel from a perspective of neuroscience and the benefits of being in nature and being out of your comfort zone and positive psychology, you name it. But the hero's journey sort of sits at the top in terms of this really beautiful example of how a transformative journey can unfold. And we do weave that into all of our trainings, whether it's our public signature experience design program or when we're doing private trainings and consulting for travel companies. But yeah, I mean, it's breaking it up into three distinct aspects, right? The before, during, and the post. Really getting people to engage with it from the minute they get that call to adventure and sort of recognize, what is this whisper? Why is it that I'm being called to hit the road? And why is this important to me? Why is travel important to me? How can I really catalyze it to have more of a positive impact on myself and on the world around me? And I think that's when the real journey begins. And then, of course, once they cross into whatever it is, the destination place that they're visiting, they're crossing that threshold from the ordinary world to the extraordinary world. I obviously have lots of opportunities to really presence and reflect and go through processes of meaning making, slay our dragons, if you will, but also make it playful. There's lots of opportunity in travel just to play intentionally, right? And I think that because sometimes the hero's journey can be so serious, it's all wrapped up in this, like, got to go on this journey and slay dragons. Well, not everyone's really excited to go and do that, but we can still follow that same process. And then, of course, coming back with that newfound wisdom, sharing and motivating on the desired changes that you want to make in your life.
Yeah, I love the idea of playfulness. And you also talk about unlearning. So I might quote you. My approach is different. It's not just about learning, but unlearning. shifting mindsets, activating awareness, and consciously designing the conditions for deep human connection, cultivating wisdom, and transformative growth. It's where purpose meets potential and performance. It's what I do. So, how does one unlearn on a transformational trip?
Thank you for sharing that. I do think that that's critical for most of us. I think a couple of things come to the surface. I mentioned we sort of lost this connection and appreciation for the potential of travel and the potential that travel has in our lives. We also approach travel from a place of what it can give to us. There's a lot of entitlement, there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of expectation, there's extraction. But we approach travel in one way, and so I think for a lot of us, we need to unlearn some of these habits and these patterns of behavior of how we travel, and shift the mindset and travel with intention. Travel with idea of who you are, where you are now, where do you want to go, and how you're going to get there. So this starts to unlock the real potential, but we need to sort of break free of some of these ways that we are currently traveling if we're going to embrace new perspectives and principles and practices. If you can do that, or if you're working with a travel designer, and this is obviously what we train on, or if you work with a hotel or visit a destination that's in the transformation economy that's doing this work, then they should guide through that process. There is value in getting coaching and mentorship and support in that unlearning to ultimately unlock what's possible with travel.
Well, let's build on that. I've obviously done some research on your Transformational Travel Council, and you have this idea of four houses: introspection, bridging, expansion, and integration. So, would you like to touch on those?
Yeah. Long story short, when we went down this path, myself and some colleagues were trying to bring travel back to its roots and its superpower for positive change in the world. And so we wanted to really get into the science and some of the ancient wisdom and art and better understand human connection and human potential. And so through that, we've created a theory of change and a foundational framework that guides all of the program and course and trainings that we bring to life. And ultimately, it is the continued expansion of connection and relationship with yourself and, your own identity, your perception, perspective of the world, and then others, your connection, relationship to others. What is your privilege? What is your bias? How do you see places and people, and trying to get people more grounded and are using their fresh eyes or their whole body intelligence in terms of how they interact with places, people and places. And then, systems and stewardship, how do people connect with awe and wonder, and how does that shift our view of the world? How does this deeper appreciation help you better understand how to participate in communities at home when you're traveling, communities at home? How can you be a purposeful part of the system that you're in? And then, integration is what I think is the holy grail in travel and tourism. Is like we all come back from our trips, whether you're traveling to transform or not, with some sort of glow, if you will. You have these aspirations. You're like, oh, I'm feeling good. I want to do this. I want to bring this to my life. I learned that. And then what happens? Typically, you get sucked back into email, you get sucked back into driving your kids around, whatever that may be. And then weeks turn into months and you've lost touch with that opportunity. So working with integration to make sure you're catalyzing experiences into meaning and into action in your life takes time, and it takes, intention, and you kind of have to see that through. But yeah, most travel companies missing that completely.
Can you offer an example on how you see that through?
Yeah, what we coach on is when people come back from a journey, they have that glow and they've got that newfound wisdom and they've got clarity and confidence to move forward with any aspiration or goal in their life. Some of the things that we recommend are first, how are you going to stay motivated, right? How are you going to be accountable? Are you going to be accountable for yourself? And maybe there's opportunity to share this with someone, right? Once we share these goals or what we would like to accomplish with someone else, that increases accountability. And then we also say, like, create a calendar with milestones and, make sure that you staying in touch and keeping a pulse on any progress that you might be making. And then also be open to that might shift and change. So to continue in that process of self-awareness and letting things sort of flow without keeping yourself to some specific action, because inevitably we will lose energy and momentum and discipline in trying to achieve goals if it no longer aligns. So I think there's a certain amount of keeping in touch with that as you move through that. But yeah, I mean, typically a good travel advisor should be having some touch points to help you sort of stay focused and energized. And that one of the really beautiful aspects of that, if you're a travel advisor, you're a hotel, you have a check-in 6 months later or 9 months later, a year later, who do you think they're going to ask for their next journey, for the next trip, right? It turns into a nice flywheel of business.
Sure it does. And a bit different to what you do. On my first retreat, which was a group of six, we made pottery. And then, of course, it had to be fired and refired and colored. And so about 6 months later, the pottery pieces were ready to ship. So it was this beautiful reminder of the trip. We also did post-retreat calls on Zoom and discussed some of the Japanese philosophy we learned. So I think, yeah, there's many ways to integrate what you learn from the experience of travel. And I think you're right. As soon as you get home, you're back to that lifestyle unless you intentionally decide this trip was life-changing, but I want to make sure it actually changes my life. I guess you have to do something post-trip or you get sucked into the lifestyle you're ultimately wanting to avoid. Not for everyone, but for many people.
Yeah, there's Dr. Susie Ross. She's a professor at San Jose State University, and she's a member of our advisory council. And she has created this figure eight concept that really expands on the hero's journey into the integration cycle underneath that, right? And sort of symbolic of going within and better understanding how you're moving through change. Having that sort of framework and getting into the nuts and bolts of how you're going to move through it and continue into process, it starts to really bear the fruit, the benefits of why we travel, if you can move through that.
It's funny you mentioned Dr. Susie Ross, because if that's the same Susie Ross who does transformative play, I've interviewed her on this
Yeah,
podcast.
it's a small world of us. More and more, people in travel and tourism that are awakening to this, and it's represents an opportunity for the industry to sort of grab hold and onto something and a community and the energy and continue to evolve itself.
So we're talking about all these positive opportunities with travel, but you did earlier say, and you also critique much of the modern tourism, or much of modern tourism is commodified and extractive. And I would also say it's destructive. And fairly recently on two trips, I don't want to say the exact locations, but in Bali and the Philippines, I almost felt ashamed being there because I saw litter and beer bottles everywhere lying on the beach. I saw these buildings being constructed illegally by foreigners and thought, this is not how it should be done. It's so disrespectful. I kind of thought, I'm ashamed to be there, to be in a way part of this, even though I wasn't throwing beer bottles around on the beach. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of that. So is that one of your
Mhm.
drivers of your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that feeling, but I also come to believe that guilting and shaming and judging in those instances, and I fall into it, isn't the most effective in creating positive change. Someone's been in sustainable tourism for most of my career. I often ask myself, and what led me to even doing this work in transformation and regeneration, it's like, why aren't we seeing the traction that we want? And why are we not seeing these initiatives that we care so much about? You can see so much passion. Where are they stalling out? And I think it's the shaming and the guilting that comes of that. We see that in the cruise industry. For us, when we look at cruises, yes, we're aware of where cruises can improve. It's an opportunity. And therefore, something like transformational travel, helping their guests travel with more intention and conscious awareness, will only deepen the experience through the cruise line and help them become more aware of how they might be able to make healthier decisions in their travels in the future.
On that, do you want to touch on regenerative systems or regenerative travel, if that's a term?
It is a term. I'm not a fan of the term regenerative travel, but in the context of our work at the TTC, we recognize that there's going to be individual stretching, learning, and growth and travel, then certain conditions are going to be in play. And there are, patterns to what those conditions are. So how can we recreate them? If we can better understand what the conditions are, then we're going to have a better chance of designing for meaning and purpose and transformation. So we went deep into that and identified, well, inevitably travelers are moving from one place to the other. And this place is there is typically the visitor economy in there, and there is a tourism bureau or a DMO. So if we're able to help the DMO or the tourism body, and then the different stakeholders, whether attractions, restaurants, museum, tour operators, trails, if we're able to help them better understand how to align with their own sense of purpose and participate in a living system that is more cooperative and regenerative and helping all life to thrive in that community, then inevitably those are going to be better conditions for transformation of the visitor. That is the way that we approach regeneration, is on a community-led, community-based way, but it's rooted in some of these higher perspectives, right? That you're very familiar with, and better understanding your values, your purpose, your goals and aspirations. And so we use Ikigai in our trainings, as I mentioned last year, in the very early stages, just to start introducing new ways of looking and approaching their work or how they show up in their community.
Nice. Well, that's good to hear. But I also think you're speaking of, and this is what you see, is transformational travel is part of the broader transformation economy. So do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I was actually just on a call with Joe Pine. He is the author of The Experience Economy, and his new book, The Transformation Economy, is available for pre-purchase now, but the book launch is February 3rd. I'm super excited to go there. I've been in touch with Joe for 7 or 8 years now. I started getting into transformative travel, and reached out to Joe because he was leaning into transformation in his first book as well, and we're able to build a great relationship. It's really about leading, defining, and measuring what is the impact of a transformative approach on the economy. And how do we provide more value, right? How do we help people become a better version of themselves, or as Joe says, a new you, and how much value that has on your life, and ultimately it aligns with values, right? And going through that process there's a process of really uncovering who you are and what your values are if you're going to go on a transformative journey. So the transformation economy works toward economic benefit, but it's rooted in values and purpose and connection and goals and aspirations, right? So the transformation economy represents just this wonderful shift, not just in travel and tourism, but globally, to really reframe how we go about our lives, how we travel, the purchases we make, the agency that we have, so it can all be more aligned with who we are and who we're trying to become.
Yeah, when you're talking, I'm thinking of the word reflection. Obviously, a lot of reflection both on the traveler and the tour guide or company behind the trip. Has that always been a part of your business, or is that something that's grown and evolved as you've gained experience?
Yeah, I think that, I grew up with hippie parents in a very spiritual environment. So introspection and reflection, these were part of who I was around in my family and my community. So with the work that we're doing, and it leans into Cobb's experiential learning cycle, is, if you're going to have an experience, the experience is going to be more meaningful if you create some time for reflection. So, looking at travels across the entire journey, but also in terms of micro experiences, if you're able to reflect on those, you're able to really level them up.
I think this also leads us to technology in AI. And you
Mm.
mentioned the tension between advancing technology and this need for meaningful human connection. How can the hospitality industry balance AI and tech enhancements without losing the soul of transformational experiences?
I wish I had the answer to that. That's a big one. I think that it is a wonderful opportunity for hospitality and tourism to let AI do its thing and allow us within the hospitality and travel and tourism retreat space to really deepen our humanity and how we connect and relate with each other. I think that when we're able to really focus in on that, and this will unfold across time, we'll start unleashing that HI, that human intelligence and that whole body intelligence that'll actually allow hotels and hospitalities to transcend the experiences that they're providing now. They're going to be more meaningful and impactful because there's going to be more human connection. And so I'm really excited to see how that unfolds. I think the other aspect of AI is, when we're talking about transformative travel, there's typically some sort of diagnosis, better understanding a traveler's motivations, what are they seeking, et cetera. And that's a really uncomfortable space for a lot of travel advisors today or travel companies, asking those questions, going beneath the surface. What AI allows you to do is, have them engage the traveler, cultivate that insight and then information, and then you can design more consciously, what that experience might look like based on that information gathered by AI.
Yeah, I was reading something the other day, and there was this idea of two AIs. So obviously artificial intelligence, but authentic intelligence. It's kind of a good way to frame it. Like use both. You could use it in really any industry. Do you want to touch on some of the retreats you offer? Is it small group, large group? Do you do anything and everything?
Not anything and everything. Yeah, so we're B2B, right? So we work with the tourism industry, and whether it's guides or hoteliers, travel advisors, et cetera. So we take a transformative learning to our trainings and our consulting, but we also like to get out into nature or on a trail or into the woods or into some sort of special place and go through an experience together, have that opportunity for us to have that shared experience and use that as a living, breathing opportunity to better understand how we can continue to develop practices that will help travelers have deeper and more meaningful experiences. And so one that we have a lot of success with is our pilgrimage, which is why I was in Japan scouting at the Kimono Koto. We got 2 departures in October with one of our ally members and alumni of our program. They're called Walking Mentorship. So this is an amazing opportunity to lean into what Walking Mentorship is doing as sort of this North Star of an organization that's combining self-development with walking outside in nature and really creating some impactful experiences for folks. They're growing significantly, consciously, and changing lives along the way. So those are some examples. We've also got wisdom retreats where we dive into how can we bring more wisdom into our work, into our lives, and into our industry. That was one that we had at Modern Elder Academy in New Mexico a couple of years ago. These are typically between 12 and 25 people, depending upon the venue. And then we have big annual events as well, where we're going to be upwards of 100 people gathering and celebrating and sharing and doing those things. And we had one in Slovenia a couple of years ago was the last time we did that.
There we go. The travel never ends, and the joy and the learning. And actually, Sony Insurance last year did a large-scale survey on 1,400 Japanese on their Ikigai sources. Mm-hmm. And number 2 was travel. I think domestic travel. And I'm sure it's a source of Ikigai for many of our listeners. So if someone is thinking, I don't want to just be a tourist, I'd love to learn to lead, to guide people to travel with meaning and purpose for transformation, how can you help them? What can you offer? I know you do courses and certification.
Yeah, we've got our accreditation programs. This year, we're launching a fairly robust course catalog that includes lots of opportunities to engage our content and our community and some of the amazing folks that we are lucky to be surrounded by. So certainly, take a look at that, whether you're a traveler or travel industry. It's all rooted in, your desire to travel better, to live better. And so there's going to be some really great content to build off of our accreditation program going into this next year. Some really exciting programs in partnership with the University of South Carolina. including some programs on regeneration and regenerative development, but also practical tools on sales and marketing. Because talking about some of these things, in the space or in the market, talking about purpose, talking about transformation, talking about growth and healing, it's uncomfortable for a lot of folks. And it is hard to, at this stage, this emerging stage of the transformation economy, to get the right messaging out there that invites people to come and experience your hotel or your destination, or to work with you as a travel advisor. So there's a lot of care and thought and strategy that's gone into that as well.
It is a unique angle because initially most people want to travel to relax, forget about their life, maybe have a bit of luxury. It's odd because I've never felt uncomfortable exploring these ideas, but I think you're right. Some people don't find it comfortable. It might even be the last thing they want to do.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's why it's important to keep it accessible. Like one of the things that we like to say, and what we've got our alumni and ally members around the world. So if you're a traveler looking for sort of values aligned transformative travel, you can reach out there. But one of the simple things that we do, regardless of your comfort level and transformation, is understand every great quest starts with a great question. So just bring some intention to one question that you want to have answered as you go through the journey. And that may take on different shape and form throughout, which is okay. But just thinking about it that way can really catalyze it, right? Turn it into something significantly more meaningful for yourself and for the people and places you visit.
Absolutely, especially with the right question or questions. Jake, I hope one day we travel together. So thank you for joining me today. Where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that is transformational.travel is the website for the TTC. I also have my own website, jakehaupert.com, if you're interested in learning more about me and some of my background and the work that I'm doing. Do some speaking and facilitating, and really appreciate the opportunity to just get out there and share and hopefully provide some value to the industry and to travelers around the world. So here to help.
I'm sure you're doing that. Thanks for being on the show today, Jake.
Hey, thank you. Take it easy, Nick. Journey on.
Indeed. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Ikigai podcast. And don't forget about my Ikigai retreat I'm hosting in Japan this year. Discover and experience Ikigai in Japan away from all the tourist hotspots in some of Japan's best kept secret places. This is a study trip for both personal and professional development. Activities will include Ikigai workshops with some of Japan's leading experts on the concept as well as special guests, Zazen meditation, washi paper making, knife forging, cooking classes, pottery making, tea ceremony, along with meaningful discussions, group work, amazing food, and heartfelt hospitality. If you would like to learn more, please go to ikigaitribe.com.